Revenge is a dish best served cold, they say. But in the world of sports, revenge isn't always loud. It's not about grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes revenge is more subtle. It's a whisper, a single word that has the power to dismantle years of dominance and bring down an empire. This is exactly what happened when Caitlin Clark, a rising star in women's basketball, found herself in a rivalry with one of the most influential figures in the sport. Geno Auriemma, a man who had reigned over women's college basketball for decades with unmatched authority and success. Auriemma, a coach with unmatched records, built an empire that was seen as untouchable. But Clark's revenge wasn't loud or explosive. It was quiet, composed, and devastating. She didn't need a social media storm or a viral campaign. All she needed was one word: no. This simple refusal would go on to symbolize a turning point in women's basketball. Not just for Clark, but for an entire generation of athletes who felt overlooked, underestimated, or stifled by the old guard. In a world where athletes are often expected to conform to a pre-established path, Caitlin Clark showed the world that greatness doesn't always come from following the rules. Sometimes it comes from rewriting them. The news broke like a bomb. A new women's basketball league, Unrivaled, had made an offer to Caitlin Clark that seemed too good to pass up. Over $1 million for her to play just 8 weeks during the WNBA offseason. For most athletes, the opportunity would have been irresistible. Money, security, the chance to make history. It was everything Clark could have asked for. And yet, her response shocked everyone. She simply said, no. On the surface, it seemed unfathomable. Why would she turn down such a massive sum? It was a financial windfall, a golden ticket to further fame and exposure. But what people failed to understand at first was that this decision wasn't about money, fame, or securing her future. For Clark, this was about control, about reclaiming the narrative of her own career. It wasn't a simple no, it was a statement. It was the moment she took her power back from the man who had wronged her, the one who had overlooked her, and the one who had once dismissed her as insignificant. In a way, her decision wasn't just a career move. It was the culmination of years of waiting for the right moment. When you're a player like Clark, you're often told to wait your turn, to bide your time. But Clark wasn't willing to wait any longer. With that single word, no, she made it clear that she wouldn't be controlled, that she didn't need the validation of others to succeed. In a world where athletes are often expected to follow the script written for them, Caitlin Clark showed that she would write her own story. It wasn't about pride, nor was it an emotional outburst. It was a calculated, strategic decision that changed the course of her career and sent shockwaves through the world of women's basketball. To fully understand the significance of Caitlin Clark's no, we need to understand the man who had long been the face of women's basketball, Geno Auriemma. For over 3 decades, Auriemma was not just a coach. He was the gatekeeper, the king of women's college basketball. His name was synonymous with success. At UConn, he had created a basketball dynasty, winning 11 national championships and molding the careers of some of the greatest players in history, including Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, and Brianna Stewart. UConn was a place where the best players in the country flocked to because it was considered the gold standard. For most athletes, to be recruited by Auriemma was not just a dream. It was the dream. It was the ultimate affirmation that they had made it. There was no question that playing for UConn meant playing for greatness, and anyone who wore the UConn jersey was destined to leave a legacy. For years, UConn wasn't just a team. It was the gold standard. To be recruited by Geno was to be chosen for greatness. It was a badge of honor that many players would die for. But Caitlin Clark wasn't like the others. She had something else. She had fire. She had determination. And most importantly, she had the vision to see a future for herself that didn't require approval from anyone else, not even Geno Auriemma. Caitlin Clark's arrival in the world of women's basketball was nothing short of revolutionary. She wasn't just another player. She was a force, a player whose talent was so immense that it transcended the game itself. Her shooting range was limitless, her court vision uncanny, and her basketball IQ was far beyond her years. She was the kind of player who could take over a game with a single shot, and with every dribble, she rewrote the standards of what it meant to be a top-tier player. Her game wasn't just about putting on a show. It was about redefining what could be accomplished on the basketball court. Where players once feared attempting shots from deep, Clark made it her signature move, draining three-pointers from anywhere, and often from distances no one had seen before. It was as if she had reprogrammed the way the game was supposed to be played. Her basketball IQ was off the charts, and her ability to control a game with ease was a rare gift, one that made her stand out from the rest. But as her profile grew, something unexpected happened. The institution of women's college basketball, led by Auriemma, failed to recognize her potential. UConn, a program that had long been the gold standard in women's sports, overlooked Caitlin Clark. She wasn't just a player passing through the system. She was an athlete capable of reshaping the sport entirely. Yet, Auriemma dismissed her, assuming that the existing players in his program, such as Paige Bueckers, would be enough to maintain UConn's dominance. The omission was shocking. Caitlin Clark, a once-in-a-generation talent, wasn't even considered by UConn. The decision left everyone bewildered. At the time, the reason behind Auriemma's choice wasn't clear, but it was later revealed that Auriemma had already locked in his future star, Paige Bueckers. He believed that one star was all UConn needed, and in his mind, Bueckers was that player. The thought of adding another generational talent like Clark seemed unnecessary. At the time, this may have seemed like a sound decision. After all, Bueckers was a top-tier player in her own right, and Auriemma had always prided himself on his ability to develop superstars. But as history would later prove, this move would be one that Auriemma would regret for years to come. By dismissing Clark, Auriemma made a critical error. His assumption that Bueckers was the only star he needed cost him dearly. He dismissed Clark's immense talent and, by doing so, gave her the fuel she needed to push beyond the limitations he had set. But more than that, it marked the beginning of the end of an era. Auriemma's empire was built on his ability to control talent, to attract the best of the best. And by missing the mark with Clark, he inadvertently revealed the cracks in his kingdom. When the press caught wind of his decision, Auriemma's response was both shocking and arrogant. Instead of apologizing or acknowledging the missed opportunity, he took a condescending approach. He told the media that if Caitlin Clark truly wanted to play at UConn, she should have been the one to call him. This statement wasn't just a poor decision. It was a slap in the face. Auriemma, the coach who prided himself on being able to spot generational talent, had dismissed Clark's ability without ever giving her the opportunity to show what she could do. Instead of taking responsibility for his own failure to recognize her potential, he placed the blame on her, a young player who had done nothing but prove herself time and time again. But what Auriemma didn't realize was that his arrogance would be his undoing. Clark, rather than being discouraged, used the snub as motivation to prove him wrong. The fire that Auriemma ignited in her would only grow stronger. And with it, her drive to show the world that she didn't need his approval to succeed. Instead of chasing a dream that had turned its back on her, Caitlin Clark made the bold decision to attend Iowa. The decision to join Iowa, a program that wasn't a national powerhouse like UConn, might have seemed like a risk. But for Clark, it was the ultimate opportunity. At Iowa, she wouldn't be the second choice. She wouldn't be overshadowed by anyone. She would be the focal point of the program, the leader, the one who would change the entire trajectory of the team. From the first game she played, it was clear. Caitlin Clark wasn't just another recruit. She was a once-in-a-lifetime talent, and she was ready to carry Iowa basketball to the top. She transformed the program almost single-handedly, leading Iowa to new heights and solidifying her legacy as one of the greatest players in the history of the sport. Clark's game didn't just change the trajectory of Iowa basketball, it changed the entire landscape of women's college basketball. As Clark's career progressed, it became clear that she wasn't just a player who could take over games, she was a player who could change the sport. Her rise wasn't just about her individual accolades. It was about breaking barriers, challenging norms, and proving that a player didn't have to go to a traditional powerhouse program to achieve greatness. Her story became a beacon for those who had been overlooked, a testament to the power of believing in yourself, even when others didn't. As Caitlin Clark's success continued to grow, Auriemma, rather than acknowledging her talent, chose to publicly mock her. He ridiculed her play style, referring to it as a kid pretending in the driveway. In doing so, he attempted to diminish her incredible achievements, to make her seem like an imposter, someone who wasn't truly deserving of the attention she was receiving. Auriemma's statement was not just an attack on Clark. It was an attack on the entire movement that she represented. Clark was a symbol of the changing landscape of women's basketball. A player who didn't need to follow the traditional path. A player who was redefining the game on her own terms. But rather than embracing this change, Auriemma chose to belittle it. What he didn't realize was that Caitlin Clark wasn't someone to be diminished. She wasn't going to shrink in the face of criticism. Instead, she would rise even higher, proving him wrong with every point, every game, and every victory. Perhaps Auriemma's greatest mistake wasn't just ignoring Clark, it was insulting the very fans who supported her. He called them naive and accused them of damaging the sport. These fans weren't just spectators, they were the heart and soul of women's basketball. They were the ones who cheered for every victory, who supported the athletes they believed in, and who had faith in the future of the sport. By mocking these fans, Auriemma exposed his lack of understanding of what makes basketball so great. It's not just about the coaches or the players, it's about the people who love the game. The fans, the families, the young girls who looked up to stars like Caitlin Clark. They were the lifeblood of the sport. Auriemma, by alienating them, sealed his own fate. As Clark's rise continued, these same fans rallied around her, proving that the future of the game was in the hands of the players and the fans who believed in it. Caitlin Clark didn't need to respond to Auriemma's insults with words. She let her game speak for itself. Her rookie season in the WNBA was nothing short of revolutionary. She not only earned Rookie of the Year honors, but she finished fourth in MVP voting. This wasn't just a personal victory for Clark. It was a victory for every player who had ever been overlooked, underestimated, or doubted. By finishing so high in MVP voting, Clark made it clear that she was a force to be reckoned with. Her success wasn't just about proving Auriemma wrong. It was about proving to the world that the future of women's basketball didn't depend on one coach or one program. It depended on the players who were bold enough to carve out their own paths. In a final, desperate move, Auriemma tried to bring Caitlin Clark back into his fold. He was behind an offer from the new league Unrivaled, a 3-on-3 basketball league meant to rival traditional systems. With big names like Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier involved, the league had credibility, but it was missing one key ingredient: a star. And there was only one player who could give the league the star power it needed: Caitlin Clark. Geno swallowed his pride and made the offer. The same coach who had once dismissed Clark was now offering her over $1 million for just 8 weeks of play. It was a move that reeked of desperation. The coach who had built an empire now realized that he couldn't move forward without her. But Caitlin Clark wasn't fooled. She saw right through the offer. It wasn't about giving her an opportunity. It was about trying to reassert control over her career, to make her a part of his narrative. But Clark wasn't going to let that happen. With a calm resolve, she once again said, No. That one word, no, had a devastating effect. It exposed Auriemma's desperation and shattered his carefully constructed empire. The million-dollar offer wasn't just a business proposal, it was an acknowledgement of failure. Auriemma had been too proud to see the future of women's basketball in the hands of players like Caitlin Clark. And in the end, that no showed the world exactly who was in control. The reversal of roles was complete. Auriemma, once the unquestioned king of women's basketball, had been reduced to begging for a player he had once ignored. Caitlin Clark, the player who had once been overlooked, was now the face of the future. Her no had done more than just reject an offer. It had dismantled the very system that had tried to suppress her. Caitlin Clark didn't just reject an offer. She rejected a system. She rejected a worldview. And in doing so, she proved that the future of the sport doesn't belong to the gatekeepers. It belongs to the players who dare to chart their own path. Her one word, no, echoed louder than all of Auriemma's championships combined. This wasn't just revenge. It was a transformation. The world had underestimated Caitlin Clark, and in doing so, they had underestimated the power of a single word.